You're listening to Mr. Suave at MrSuave.com.
Mod is a generic term for the modern young man.
You were just a little mod. Just a little mod. She's a mod, she's a mod, she's a mod. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't give a monkey's arseholes about mods and rockers.
All I really want is me a mod boy with his own unique style.
Are you a mod or a rocker?
No, I'm a mocker.
One of us mods are getting underway. It's taking all night and into the day.
Mods are back again. Mods are back again. Mods are back again.
Whether you approve or disapprove, they are real. And they're happening now in the mod world all around you.
Mod world.
Is this generation against the community, mocking our heritage? I don't know, but I don't think so.
They seem exuberant and normal enough, and certainly active enough. Perhaps some of us are just getting old and crusty and forgetting what it meant to be young and active in every sort of way.
Hi, I'm Linda from the Chelsea Curve, and you're listening to Mr. Suave's Mod World at MrSuave.com.
Welcome to Mr. Suave's Mod World. This is Mr. Suave here, and I am joined again this week by a friend of the Modcast, Vic Wayne from Star Collector. How are you, Vic?
I'm great, man. How are you? Great to hear you and, well, see you, because, of course, we're doing this on Zoom, but the audience won't see us.
No, that we're secretive that way. Nobody gets to see what we're doing.
Spidey spy, man.
Yeah. So how are things in Vancouver? Do you guys have a heat wave going on like so many other places in the world right now?
No, it's not been too bad. We've been getting the odd bits of rain here and there, which cools it down, and then, some nice bits of sun, but it hasn't been crazy hot. A few years ago, we had stuff in the 40s. Well, I guess the 40s for you guys in the States means like 110.
Yeah.
That was crazy. But yeah, it hasn't been bad at all. It's actually been quite pleasant. When it's warm, there's a little bit of a breeze, and then other days it's it's great.
Same here in Seattle, and yet all over the country down here in the U.S., of course, because of the World Cup, so many of the games are like, these crazy heat waves, and then Europe too. But we're lucky, both of us being in the Pacific Northwest, dodged that bullet.
Indeed.
Well, I wanted to have you on to talk a little bit about Star Collector's recent tour to the UK and some things you saw and heard, and just sort of get your take on the state of the scene over there. And we'll get into talking about some new music and probably some old music too. But tell us a little bit. You were gone for quite a while over there.
Well, I guess quite a while is relative, but we did 9 shows in 10 days, and then we had some travel time on, during that as well. So I think we were gone 14, 15 days. So it wasn't that long, but we certainly packed in lots of shows. I got to admit, after about the 3rd or 4th show, I was like, is my voice going to hold out for the show, like doing that many nights in a row? But I was quite pleasantly surprised it did. You just never know. But yeah, it was fantastic. We had some brilliant shows: London, Brighton, Liverpool, Portsmouth. What we did is we based ourselves in Portsmouth, which is in the south, slightly west, I guess, of London. And we stayed there for the first 9 or 10 days. And then we would drive to the shows. We'd drive to London and we would drive back to Portsmouth to sleep. A little bit excessive in the driving, but it actually worked out really well because it gave us kind of like a home base, and we didn't have to pack up every night.
Right.
And unlike, when we went 20 years ago, we weren't sleeping on the floors of friends and, which we really did.
Yeah.
So it was actually great. And the places that we Airbnb'd were just the perfect sizes, the right amount of beds, functional showers, decent kitchens.
That's always nice.
Really nice hosts that, you're like, oh, we're running out of coffee. And then 10 seconds later, there's a bunch of pods sitting on your doorstep, So it was fantastic. And we also had some really good friends that we made when we first went over. So Steve and I took the band over in 2004, the first time, to do the IPO International Pop Overthrow Festival at the Cavern in Liverpool. And at that time, we had my brother Adam on bass and our longtime first drummer, Ringo, on drums. And that was just, surreal, because being a huge 60s British music fan, Beatles, obviously, but, all those, the Kinks and the whole thing, and the Who, of course, it was like you were suddenly there. You're actually playing there, which was so trippy. And, but I got to admit, all these years later, it hasn't lost its luster. It's still pretty wild to go to those places. So this time we went with our current bassist, Tony, who we just call Tone, and our drummer, Mickey, who's new to the band, but been with us almost a year now. And they were just so keen. And it was kind of like also, like we went and did the Beatles stuff the first couple times we were over there. But because we had new guys, doing the Beatles stuff again was kind of like, doing it all over
really
again.
Cool.
Yeah, so we did Strawberry Field and Penny Lane, and went to John Lennon's childhood house on Menlove Avenue, and went to the Dovedale Tavern where they used to hang out, and we had drinks and stuff there, and real good old fish and chips from the source, as it were. So it was amazing. And we had so I was saying, we made these friends when we first went over. This one guy in particular whose name is Nish. This is what he goes by, and Nish is a bass player, and we met him at the very first show we did in London in 2004. And he helped us set up shows in 2005, some with his band, some others. We slept at his little flat on his floor, literally. And we just stayed friends over social media all these years. He got into a new band over the time, and he followed our adventures and crazy exploits. And so this time when I was thinking, yeah, maybe we should go over there again. We got Mickey in the band that was keen to tour. It just kind of felt right. Like it was the 20th anniversary of the last time we were there, which was 2006. And it was amazingly, I say this with, my head, the little head exploding emojis. It was the 30th anniversary of the band.
Wow.
So Steve and I were like, this just feels like the right time to go over again. And everyone was super enthusiastic. And Nish and a couple other wonderful people, Steve and Tanya, who are in bands in Portsmouth, helped us organize shows, record in stores.
Wow.
Lent us gear, so we didn't have to take any gear.
Wow.
And the stuff that we didn't borrow from them, I organized to use drums and amps from other bands and venues and stuff. So it took a lot of organizing, but it was so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like it. That is 9 shows in 10 days is a lot. And you guys must be really, really sharp right now.
Well, we'll see. You're coming to see us in a couple of weeks. You might be
true.
eating your words. But
no, I don't think so.
Hope so.
So. That's great. So I know it does take a lot of organizing. And like you said, lucky you didn't have to take much in the way of gear. It's hard from what I've heard for US and Canadian bands, maybe not so much for Canada, but for US bands, it's really difficult to tour these days in the UK or in Europe. Just the various hoops they have to jump through makes it hard. And so it's they don't do it as much, but it's even harder for those bands coming over here, at least to the US, which is why so few of them come, and only bands that have huge budgets, can afford to do that stuff, really. Did you find it was hard to do that, or was it just normal logistics that people help you plan?
Well, so I would echo your thoughts about going into the States. That's something that's always been a trickier prospect for bands like us. So, you're always trying to figure out ways to do it. But in terms of the UK, we did get proper work permits in case we needed them. Our first initial thought was, well, let's just go over there guerrilla style. We're not bringing gear anyway. We'll send merch ahead, which we did. We'll stuff a few T-shirts and CDs in our bags,
right?
And then we'll just go over there as tourists. And then I was talking to a guy I'm in a hockey pool with, Joe Keithley, who's in DOA, which is a famous punk band.
Oh, yeah.
And we're sitting at this hockey pool meeting, and Joe said, I see you guys are going over to Europe. I don't know, this was like 6 weeks before the tour or something, maybe 2 months. And I said, yeah. And he asked how we're doing it. And I said, well, this is kind of what we're thinking, whisper.
Right.
And he's like, I know this guy over there who's helped us for the last 10 years. Every time we go over, he gets work permits for us, and we don't have to sweat it. I'll put you in touch with him. And he did. And the guy got permits for us within 10 days. And
wow.
They were not expensive. And so we went over there feeling much more relaxed and confident that we didn't have to worry about it. Now, all that being said, when we got to the border, everything had been gone electronic. And maybe it's because we were Canadians. I'm not sure, because there were different lines for different countries. But all we did was show our passports through this electronic thing, and we got through. We didn't even need the work permits, it turned out. But we were glad we had them, because we, no one likes to lie, and you certainly don't want to get caught.
Sure.
Doing that stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So the 9 days that you played, said you were in London, Liverpool, Portsmouth. Where else?
Brighton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we did 2 nights in Liverpool, 2 nights in London. Brighton, Portsmouth. We did an in-store, like a record in-store that was super fun. It was all like unplugged. Our drummer played a little practice pad and a coffee mug as a cowbell, and we all played acoustics, and we even got an acoustic bass for Tony. And we just, no mics. We just did the full-on acoustic thing, and did, that was actually amazingly fun. And that had a great mod element to it, because the place is called Harbor Records in this little town of Emsworth, which isn't far from Portsmouth. And the guys, Ken and Rob, that own the store, were super keen. They were putting out promotions and posters and the whole thing. and it's a really cool little record store. It's not that big, but it's great. And they invited the Emsworth Scooter Club, which is all mod scooters like Vespas and Lambrettas, like fully decked out, to do their scooter rally that day and end the rally at Harbor Records right as we started playing. So all these scooters came, and we took pictures with us near the scooters and in front of them, and then these mods that were driving the scooters came in and listened to the in store and that. So that was another night. But yeah, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mentioned we were at the Cavern in Liverpool, and great club in London called Hope and Anchor, which has been around for, the Clash and XTC and
wow.
and who else? U2. The Stranglers, who else? Joy Division, like these bands had all played at Hope and Anchor, so that was quite a venerable place to be able to play as well. Oasis too, I guess. So and then a newer place in London as well called the Water Rats, which we did with some friends of ours. It was really cool. It was called an International Power Pop Triple Header, is how they announced it. So it was us from Canada, our friends that are in this band in the States called the High Frequencies, which are Lisa Michaels and her husband Tom and these other two, Scott and Ricky, and they're great. And they were on the bill representing the States. And then we also had the British band called Emperor Penguin.
Oh yeah, I know
not super mod, but they're really freaking cool.
Yeah,
really dig their stuff.
Yeah, the great band.
Yeah, and so Neil and Nigel from Emperor Penguin kind of did all the work on making that gig happen and designed posters and video reels and stuff. And that was fantastic. We really enjoyed the other bands. We enjoyed the camaraderie and had lots of friends of ours that I knew from London, or the other guys did come and see it. And so it was just, it was a dream. Those kind of things are like, life's about the stories and the memories, man. It's,
right.
Like money's money, but like, who gives a shit? Like you want to have these things to smile about and to think about and to cherish, and things like that tour really are.
Yeah, experiences trump stuff all the time. It's the great experiences that you remember and those memories that you have forever and get to laugh about later. You got to go to Brighton. Where did you play in Brighton?
We played a place called the Brunswick, which is really not far from all the piers that, when you start conjuring up Brighton, if you're a fan of quadrophenia, as you and I certainly are. It's really close. Like you could walk down to some of the piers. Brighton's actually bigger than I thought it was. Somehow maybe it's because of quadrophenia. It always feels like it's this really tiny little seaside town, but It's actually quite a bit bigger. And I don't know if it's gotten bigger because it's got this cachet, a tourism cachet because of the whole mods thing. But maybe it's always been that big. I don't know. We didn't play in Brighton the last times we were over there. This was our first time. But it was great to be there. We went to, we actually did another day we had one day off, the one day out of the 10 that we didn't play. We decided we were going to go and drive into Brighton and spend the day going to like Modfather clothing and Quadrophenia Alley clothing, and go see Quadrophenia Alley where the famous Jimmy and Step scene takes place. And we took shots of, me down the alley and and did all this kind of, so we did get to do some of that stuff, on our previous trips. We had, like, way back when, we got to do Stonehenge and some of these other cool clubs. Like we played this place, the Borderline in London, that no longer exists, but that had also been a stomping ground for like the Smiths and Oasis and bands like that when they were coming up. So again, these are all just experiences that you start to cull and put together. And it brings the band together, obviously, too. I guess in some cases it could split a band apart.
Right.
I actually know some friends of ours from Vancouver that did a similar thing back in the early 2000s. That they went over there thinking they were going to like relocate there, and they foolishly went without a drummer, and thinking they just picked someone up along the way. And it actually did end up breaking up their band, which was a shame because they're a really good band. But in our case, it just kind of, I think it just strengthens the bonds between the guys. And certainly for Mickey, he likes to joke that his first real show playing Star Collector stuff was in London, England, which he just thought was really fucking cool.
Yeah, of course. That's great. So tell us a little bit about the bands that you met, that you played with, and what new music you encountered. As listeners know, this whole recent series of modcasts, and probably for the rest of this year, when I interview people, I'm talking to them about whether or not they think there is a new mod revival. Is it a revival, a resurgence, a recasting? I don't know, a renaissance, something like that. But I got answers from people all over the board so far. So I'm just curious to know from your reflection on being on the ground at ground zero, sort of right there at the finger on the pulse. How did that sound to you, all those bands and things?
Well, I guess there's sort of two parts to that. I mean, one of them is we did play with some really good bands. I wouldn't say that most of them were quote mod unquote bands. They might have been more power poppy or a little more kind of like prototypical Brit influence like Emperor Penguin, but I wouldn't call them a mod band.
Right.
But we played with some really good bands. We played this great 3-piece in Portsmouth called Freestone, and it was actually the guitar player and bass player of that band that helped us out with Nish doing all the organization. So, but they're also a really great band. They're releasing their first album sometime coming up soon. But they're a little more veteran musicians like us. So if you're asking about the younger stuff, I guess I would say, if you did sort of prime me that this might be coming up, so it's not like I'm just, got the snippets on my fingers, but I did jot down a few that I'm keen on personally that we didn't play with these bands, but they were either touring over there at the time or they've come into my, listening space over the last year or so that I would say probably qualified pretty much in that whole mod vibe. And they are young performers and really good ones. So one of the biggest one right now is the Molotovs,
right,
which seem to be really big over there right now. And they're very jam-ish. Singer's got this almost kind of stomping, angry approach that he takes when he, very Weller-ish. And his sister's like a really great performer, and she's a bass player and great poses really well, and they have great clothing and all that. And musically, they're also really good too. And then a few of the others that I sort of became aware of recently over the last year or so, I would say Sharp Class.
Yeah, Sharp Class.
The Lemon Twigs, obviously, although I would say they're not quite mod. They're a little more kind of Beach Boys influenced pop, but they'd fit in there somewhere. And then one that I really dig called Maud Lang.
Yes.
You heard them?
Yes, I just heard their latest album, or
it's their first album.
Is it their debut album? Yeah, I just listened. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is fantastic. I listened all the way through it just the other day, which these days it's so easy to sort of listen to 3 songs by a band and then move on to something else. And I was just fantastic band. So there's just some of the ones that jumped out at me of younger performers that are right within that mod style. It's either retro, like Maud Lang is very big starry.
Yeah,
I would say, if you like that, which who wouldn't? And then, like I said, the Molotovs kind of fit the jam mold a little more. But yeah, and Sharp Class is very mod, like full on mod. But all those bands are really good. And then there's some, slightly older performers that are also keeping that spirit alive. I mentioned the High Frequencies for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think I mentioned Mopsy to you, which is a band in your backyard in Seattle that I do like. And they're definitely in that vein. And then another great band from your city called the Pop Cycle.
Yes,
I guess you could pronounce it. But David and Brett for that band, are the main guys in that band. We've done a couple shows with them a few years back, and excellent writers of that same sort of mod vibe. And of course, the Chelsea Curve out of Boston comes up too, which also fit it. So those are I don't know what 8-10 ones that I would say if you're really looking for stuff that isn't clicking on the Who again and clicking on the Jam again. If you want your mod fix, check out any of those bands. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all.
All right, let's listen to a few of them right now.
Geraldine, how have you been this whole time? What do you see? Because we've seen our social crimes. We never think on the same pot but with different taste. So don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget me now, Geraldine. Do you get what I mean? So don't flee the scene. The cat's got their queen. I said, oh, Geraldine. Do you get what I mean? I said, don't flee the scene. queen, you're loud and mean, you're loud and mean. TV queen, you're a TV queen. You're a TV queen, you're loud and mean, you're loud and mean. You're a TV queen, you're loud and mean, shouting out your city scream. TV queen from house to house, find your way through the ins and outs. Television I can't see, looking down a one-way screen. Try your luck one more time, girl, you're living on your last few dimes. Wait tonight. TV star, that's what you are, that's what you are. TV star, that's what you are, that's what you are. TV star, 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 you're a TV star. You're a TV star, that's what you are, that's what you are. You're a TV star, that's what you are. Riding around your big black car. TV star, you just can't win. All that's here has always been.
I don't feel I'm part of the normal run-of-the-mill rat race. I don't want to be, put it like that, you know. I just feel superior to everyone, all the little sheep that are running around out there.
We are back with Vic from Star Collector, just listening to some newer sort of mod and mod-friendly acts out there. It's always interesting to try and figure out, is this a mod band? Is it a band of mods? I always use the term mod friendly. I play mod friendly music, which means it can be anything. So it's always that way. And the bands that you were talking about, these young bands, the Molotovs are pretty young. I don't think either of them are 20 yet, which is kind of amazing. And Sharp Class is also pretty young. And so these others, I've seen a number though that have sprung up probably, I'd say, certainly in the last year, maybe even in just the last 6 months. Some of them don't even have recordings, but they do record themselves playing live. And they really sometimes are like garage bands because they're in a garage or somebody's, backyard or family room. And these kids, 13, 14, 15, dressed in the best their best attempt to look like mods, and playing pretty well. I mean, for kids like that. So it's always exciting to see kind of new faces, new people. At the shows you were at, did it tend to be the old guard, the guys that like us that you expect to see, or did you notice an unusually large number of younger people or really young kids coming out to shows, or did you get a sense that was going on anywhere?
I would say, yeah. So that's interesting because it kind of, I think, depended for us on what other bands were on the bill if we're talking specifically in the UK shows. There was two in particular where we were playing with bands that were much younger, like kind of like 20s, early 20s even. And of course, they brought all their friends and fans too. So those two in particular, one was the Brighton show and one was this other show in a place called Chichester. We kept wanting to call it Chichester, but they said Chichester. And Chichester. And those two in particular had a lot of young people at them. I would say the others were primarily, kind of older, an older demographic than those two for sure. It was a bit of both. But you always hope you're going to appeal to whoever you play to,
right?
And I'm certainly was quite pleased with how we, comported ourselves playing with in those two shows. But even there was some young folks spattered amongst the other shows too, and it was great. But I would say from my perspective of our shows, I would say it was a slightly older demographic there.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's hard to tell if there's a resurgence. Certainly in the UK, there might be. Of course, everybody would expect that. But there are a lot of new bands coming out of the US, and I would guess probably in Canada too, certainly, that are very mod friendly, to use that term again. And Japan, Greece, Brazil. I was just in touch with a guy. His band is the Targets in Brazil, and they're all they tend to be fairly young too. But man, it's kind of made me think that maybe there really is something, thanks to the internet and all of that, of course, that the resurgence that might be happening in the UK is sort of spreading out, and you're starting to see more from other places, which is kind of cool. Here in the US, a pretty young new band from LA is the Silverados. Have you heard the Silverados?
No,
fantastic, very jamish, very mod revival sounding, but pretty contemporary, a lot of punk-like energy. Sharp dressed, they're those punks in suits sort of guys.
Right.
So
and
yes, right, back in the day. And the question is, if you have a mod revival, is it really a revival? Maybe it is, if all you are doing is sounding like the mod revival. So I'm always looking for bands that's their foundation, but maybe are pushing into other areas, other sounds, incorporating different things and building something new. That's why I've always liked Star Collector. You guys don't always sound exactly the same over the years. There's a lot of, I don't know what the word is, but you have a lot of influences there that you can hear, and it creates something new. It's a sort of a new quilt every time gets woven out of that. And I've always really liked that. In your own catalog, your foundation and your influences were obviously probably a lot of 60s things, a lot of the mod revival and jam and so on. But now you have some new influences. Are there new things that you're finding that you're like, wow, this is influencing how I'm writing or creating music these days?
I wouldn't say that it's so much that there's been stuff that influences the writing. That I don't know, maybe it's a case of having written a lot of songs over a lot of years that I kind of write a little more in a cocoon, whether it's with Steve or with other writers. I don't know. That's not to say that there's not lots of music that I listen to that does sort of influence where I'm going, but it's never really that conscious that when we're writing something that this is going to be taken from, I heard this by this new band. Let's make sure none of that. And to go back to your point, I do appreciate that you'd say that we're we have that as part of our foundation, but we're really just kind of mod friendly, because I really do believe it's kind of like we also sometimes get lumped in with the as a power pop band, and I would say that we have elements power pop and mod are not the same, but they're similar because they're based around British pop music, good catchy hooks and all that stuff, and we aim for that. But again, we do so much outside of both of those realms that I think it would be quite limiting to refer to us as a mod band or a power pop band. But we certainly embrace a lot of both of those genres in what we do, because it is kind of what, for me, for sure, what I grew up on in my first bands. But yeah, we like to venture all over the place. And the other guys in the band, I'd say our new drummer, Mickey's probably as the most like me in terms of what he grew up on. Like, he always says that This Is the Modern World was like the first moment that he just kind of went boom into alternative music and, all that was like, and I always joke and I say, yeah, that's their worst album. But anything with Tonight at Noon on, it's worth listening to just for that. Yeah. But the other guys too, different influences. Like, you've met Steve, our guitar player, and he didn't grow up strictly on that stuff because he grew up in a really tiny little town, right sort of on the Alberta BC border, and he just had AM radio as his influences. So it was still pop music, but it could have been stadium rockish. It could have been, like whatever. It's just like sort of a bit all over. And he ended up glomming onto a lot of my stuff over the years that got him into listening to that. Plus, he'd seek it out on his own. And then Tony, is a huge fan of the 80s. So he brings a bit of that too. But, I think we all understand that we're trying to do stuff that's a little bit different. And to create, like you said, when you listen to an album, you're not quite 100% sure what you're going to get song to song because, there's nothing wrong. I mean, Maud Lang's a great example of a really great record, but I kind of know after listening to 4 or 5 of the songs that the next song I'm going to get is probably going to be sounding a bit Big Starry as well. And that's okay. Yeah. But I think what I was going with this whole thing was, you were saying a lot of these young bands, that's kind of what, but to me, that's kind of what you have to do when you're a young band. You have to really solidify what you love first before you start venturing into other places with it. Yeah. And then slowly over time, I think is when you start to kind of go, let's go out here a little bit. And maybe we'll go that way actually for a little bit and try, that would be weird. Mm-hmm. Let's put that weird instrument into a song and let's change the timing of that. And let's, like all these kind of little things that seep into you as a writer, but also as a band and all the, when the guys arrange stuff, those things come with time is my feeling, at least in my experience. That's been, my first band was full on, like we looked like the Jam. We emulated the Jam. We covered the Jam. We covered some of the Mod Revival and some of the old 60s stuff, but our originals, were straight out of that pocket. And then over time, you realize you kind of need to find your own way. It doesn't mean you're not going to still have the Jam as a huge influence, which they are for me, but you got to kind of go out and find those tangents. I think if you're going to remain interesting to whoever's listening to you, and if whoever's listening to us is the 4 of us and you, then fair enough. Okay. But yeah, that's just my feeling on sort of the overall growth and how creativity should slightly morph and change and roll as time goes by.
Right. And that just explains the kind of story arc of every great band, I think. If you go back to the original Mods, what were they doing? They were playing covers of blues, modern jazz, soul music, of course. If you listen to the early Stones and the Who and stuff, they're doing covers for the most part. And it took a little while, even the Beatles, originally. And then as they advanced, they started incorporating things, whether it's ideas or sitar or whatever. And then the Mod Revival was the same way. Those earliest mod bands in the revival in the late 70s were playing the music from the 60s. But they eventually kind of grew up into creating their own sound and style. And every good band, I think, goes through that to a certain extent. I love, you find a band and I'm listening to an album, they're new to me, and I'm like, wow, this is great. And I'm enjoying it. And then I'm like, okay, I got to go back and hear what their first record sounded like.
Right. Yeah. Because if you find out about them on record 5, it might be kind of like a journey to see where number 1 got to number 5, and then what happens on 6 and 7, and hopefully you continue to grow or expand or whatever it is. Like you mentioned, all the great bands, like people always are in awe of the difference between the Beatles when they started and the Beatles in 1970. Like that's only like 8 years.
That's amazing.
Like, you can't even imagine, it's just crazy, the leap that happened there, but also to, the Kinks and the Who and big, all these bands, they do morph and change if they're going to stay relevant. And those, obviously all those certainly have, but I don't know. It is an interesting thing. I just, writing songs is just such an interesting journey. You just sort of, I write most of the stuff sitting on my couch with an acoustic guitar, which is interesting because, when you listen to a lot of our stuff, it's pretty, there's a lot of rockin' stuff in there.
Yeah.
But it starts out either with me and Steve hacking away together on the couch, or just me writing on the couch, or getting a demo from an outside writer that I might co-write with, like that guy Ian from the Soundtrack of Our Lives. He'll send me some demos and I'll mess around with them. And so there's a lot of different ways it happens, but I would say the majority of the time it's just me sitting with an acoustic guitar and just kind of getting into whatever the vibe of the initial impetus was. Like I just finished a song the other day that Steve came up with this little guitar riff in rehearsal, and I'll often stop him in the middle of, he'll start playing something and I'll go, stop, put that on your phone.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, send it to me tomorrow. And sometimes it comes to something and sometimes it doesn't. And this little riff just kind of got me going on a bunch of other different stuff. And I sort of wrote the whole song on Canada Day. And it just started with this one little guitar riff of his. And so who knows, it's creativity is a pretty wonderful thing. You just never know where it's going or where it's starting or coming from. But man, I do love it.
Yeah. Do you find that the lyrics, the poetry of the lyrics and all of that comes first? You have these ideas, or do you find, like you were just saying, Steve plays a riff and you go, that's it right there. And maybe it's both, chicken and egg, right?
Actually, for me, it's actually not so much. Once in a while I will jot down ideas or phrases or I want to write about this, or, maybe one line, pop it into my notes on my phone or something. But I would say, I can't even remember for how long, the music always seems to come first.
Okay.
Yeah, usually the chord progressions sort of form first, and then I just hum nonsensical phrases or whatever over them until I get melodies. And once that's happening, then I kind of get an idea of what kind of song it's going to be. Is it going to be an angry song? Is it going to be a sad song? Is it going to be a joyful song? Is it going to be a song about, sex, whatever? And it just depends on what the mood of the music and that is. And then I kind of take it down into the lyrical path and try to, because it is the melody is kind of the key.
Sure. Well, you guys have great lyrics. I think that your songs are super well written, which is why I asked that, because to me, it would seem, as a non-songwriter, non-musician, that if you have a great idea and you write some lyrics, then you put the music to it. But you're kind of coming at it the other way, and that's impressive, because the lyrics that you guys have in your songs are really, and your albums always have, a sad song, an angry song, a relationship song, a fun song, a story song. You tell a lot of stories, and I like that. So when you're
I do because like life is, like we said right off the top, life's about memories and stories, right? Well, that's kind of full circle conversation. Like, there's so much that goes on in our lives, and some of it's sad and some of it's funny and some of it's ridiculous and some of it's angry, and that's part of the human experience. And as a lyricist, that's kind of what I'm always aiming to do, is to capture moments of that human experience. And even if it's just my experience or someone that I'm close to, and you hope that it's going to transcend that and translate out into the people that are listening. And sometimes it does. Sometimes people are like, yeah, that's an interesting lyric, but what the hell's that song about? And that's fine too. And
but that makes it fun.
Not everything has to be literal or perfectly explained. But that is kind of what I strive for, because I always kind of figure, one day when I'm long gone, the one thing my kids will have to sort of be able to harken back to see kind of what was dad thinking, what was dad into, what were his likes and dislikes, and what were his challenges, and what were his, epiphanies, and, what were his great, all those things. So it's kind of almost like a musical diary lyrically. Yeah, not to get too philosophical about the whole damn thing, but that's kind of the deal, man.
You had told me when we were talking earlier that you had identified what you thought were Star Collector's more mod songs, or most mod, or mod-ish, or mod-friendly songs. Do you have a few of those that we can wrap things up with here?
Yeah, I mean, we've got quite a few over 7 albums, but I focus mostly on the more recent stuff. But I'll tell you what, why don't I throw you out about 10 and you choose whichever ones you want to play by the time this runs.
All right, I'll do that. I probably already played a number of these. Okay, which doesn't mean I can't play them again.
Well, that's true. You probably have. But I would say, if you want the mod influenced kind of stuff, musically and or lyrically, I would say probably on our new record, Everything Must Go, Shining Example, Victory Dance, Shakedown the Breakdown is one you really liked. I remember from our previous album, Beat It to Death. That's a good one. A little more tongue in cheek and lots of fun to play live. The album before that, certainly the song Game Day, which is the title track, has certainly got its Who and Jam and Big Star and all that influences, and that's a really powerful song for me. There's a song on our fourth album, 100 Bulletproof, called The Evil Room, which is very much about my first mod band. You know that one?
I remember we talked about it. That's a great song.
Oh, okay,
The
well,
Evil
there you go.
Room.
There's one. There's a great story there. That's really a story about my first mod band rehearsing in my parents' basement. And my dad had this room that was in the basement, kind of around the corner, that really didn't have much in it. And it was, I don't know why it was kind of creepy. My dad was the sweet guy, but it was kind of like this empty room with not much in it. And Dave, our guitar player, had dubbed it the Evil Room. And one day after rehearsing, the three of us, and my brother, who was the bass player, and myself and Dave went into the Evil Room and sat there, and we're just feeling really empowered about what a great rehearsal we had, and we're starting to sound like a band and all that because we're all teenagers at this point. Mm-hmm. And we sort of held hands, Ouija board style, and made a deal with the devil to one day be bigger than the Beatles. So that's the story of the Evil Room. Yeah, and then maybe Skyscraper off our debut album, which is definitely, I wrote that with Dave, or actually wrote it myself, but it was when Dave was in the band at the beginning. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of them. But anyway, I'll leave it to you to choose. There's a good chunk for you.
All right, I'll whip a few of those out. I used to, for a long time, try not to play a song twice ever on the Modcast. And now I've reached the 20th year. This is the 20th season. So I've decided it's okay to sometimes play songs more than once. So I may do that. But there's a lot of your songs. A lot of your songs I could include. They're all good. When you are on tour, how far back do you dig? Do you go all the way back to the first album and play a song? Or is it, I would assume you're playing the last Game Day forward kind of stuff, maybe?
Yeah, I would say for when we're doing just like one set at a show, we tend to focus mostly on the newer records, and especially the most recent record, which just sort of makes sense. But, for instance, we're doing some shows in Alberta, the province next to us, coming up next month. And one of the shows, we do 2 full 1 hour plus sets and an encore. So We'll do like 30 songs that night. And on those shows, we definitely do like at least 1 or 2 from each of the first 4 albums. And then we start doing, 4 or 5 from Game Day, 5 or 6 from Attack Sustain, and then maybe 7 or 8 even from the new record, and a new 1 or 2. So we've got that show coming up on August 14th in Calgary at this great place called the Ironwood. And that's when we get to really just dig in and get into all the old stuff, which is really fun for us because most times when you're playing a show, you're doing one set.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. It could be half an hour. It could even be an hour. But an hour, it's still pretty easy to fill a pretty good 1 hour set with just new stuff, and keep it interesting and, have the nice roller coaster of the ups and downs, the quiet parts, and then the full blown cowbell and scissor kick moments and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's fun for us when we get to do shows where we can play more and then dig into the old stuff. And
well, Vic, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this, talking to us, sharing some new music, old music, your music. And I think going forward, I'm just going to say Star Collector is a rock band. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, we put in our bio, we call ourselves like a mod influenced rock and roll band.
There you go.
Right, which is kind of like there's definitely the whole mod Brit thing in there, and but we are also a rock band too. There's no question. So
it's kind of all encompassing at that point, which lets you be as free as you want to be.
Yeah, it is. It's nice not to be pigeonholed. It's nice to be able to go and just feel like you can do whatever and get away with it. Someone did say to us that the one thing that always, I heard this a couple times actually in reviews on our last record, is that the one thing that always ties the records together is the sound of Steve and my voice together. So somehow, because that's always there, we can kind of get away with moving into these other musical areas, but there's still always going to be the sound of us singing together. And that is kind of, I think, a defining part of our sound. And the good part of that is it allows us to do a song that sounds like Stone Temple Pilots, or then a song that sounds like Fountains of Wayne, or, like however you want to note it, whatever you read into it. But yeah, it allows us to go in some areas that might not be thought of as, a mod area or a power pop area or whatever.
Yeah.
Or a rock area.
Well, I look forward to seeing where you're going to go in the future. I'm sure you probably have another album already in your head working up, right?
That new one I just finished is number 16. So we definitely have an album plus in my head and on acoustic demos. So we're just starting to work on the new stuff now. So probably the better part of next year will be spent on recording. Maybe we'll get something out by the end of next year, if not the beginning of the year after. But yeah, no, and I'm really happy with lots of the tunes. And we were even going to do a couple new ones when we hit Calgary, and probably we are doing for sure one new one when when you come see us.
Okay. Yeah, I look forward to that.
Shortly.
Shortly. It's imminent. I look forward to that, to come see you guys play live for the first time. So that'll be great.
That'll be great to see you out there.
All right. Well, thank you, Vic from Star Collector. Appreciate it. And I'll see you soon.
I've always wished Eddie could communicate with a tone of voice that didn't rattle the timbers of every house in a 4-block vicinity.
Don't touch that dial, kids.
Big thanks once again to Vic Wayne, frontman of Vancouver, BC's own modish indie rocker Star Collector. Way back there at the beginning of the Modcast, I kicked things off with Skyscraper, which is the first track from their first album, a sort of pleased to meet you song. As always, you can get the track list and all the links to all the stuff at MrSuave.com. And then for this Modcast number 604, I've got a whole slew of Star Collector videos up there. Star Collector always make great videos in support of the album, so be sure to check those out over at MrSuave.com. Right now, I'm going to leave you with a few more songs from Star Collector. I'm Mr. Suave. Thanks for listening.
Daddy's tomb in the evil room made of tea. And shooting for Mars, the future was ours. The future was open, wide like space. We wished for the stars, was that so bizarre? The stars were the faces of Dorian Grace. And shooting for Mars, the future was ours. future was open wide like space. We wish to be stars. Is that who we are? Or simply the faces of Dorian Gray? Julian's in a land of illusion. His ears are radio, his eyes a video game. That screen's a ball of intrusion, but every minute his mind's in it the same. So he's lost in space, so he's lost in the frame. That's what you get when you forget to place your bets, to kill your video. Daddy-o, he's memory cruising, pumps up the stereo, he's feeling very old school. Well, half the fun's in the choosing, immersed in it, and every minute's full. Drop the needle, record. Damn, that big artwork's cool. That's what you get when you forget. Big stick cassettes could kill your video. Kill your video. Kill your video. Kill your video. Julian shuts off the computer, runs upstairs when he hears that song. Hey Daddy, what's that song? This one's my generation, and this is anarchy, and this is rock and roll style. The kid jumps off the couch, smashes their guitar. So kill your video. Kill your video with your rock and roll. Turn up the stereo and kill your video. Kill your video. I'm thinking about time all the time this time. I've got no reasons to deny. Stare at the wrinkles, but the eyes still shine. They mirror seasons left behind. 'Cause everybody's told that they're gonna. Everyone gets old, they don't wanna know. No. Everybody's told that they're gonna go. Everyone gets old, they don't wanna know. But the hand they hold don't have to fold. Well, I'm thinking about you all the time this time. I've got no rewrites to change mine. Bash at this old guitar and have a glass of wine. A million side. Still everybody